Hello, welcome to Archetype, sponsored by Dell. I'm your host, Ashley, and I am not joined with anybody today, as much as last week was super fun for our Halloween themed stream. And if you missed that, you should definitely go check it out. We won't be continuing on that fun little guide. That was just kind of like a one-time fun thing to do. So here we are. We're back to our regular scheduled programming, which works out really well actually because it's the beginning of the month. So hopefully we can now finish this guy in a good time frame. So yeah, I'm gonna get drawn a little bit here. And if you're in the chat, you can always say hi. And if you're new or you've never seen it, or maybe you tuned in yesterday, or not yesterday, last week, then you don't know that usually what we do is we actually start the week off, or the sculpt off, really with 1 week of drawing. So we'll create a 2D design to kind of base off of first. You might be asking now, Ashley, what am I drawing? This archetype's a little bit of a different one, so it's called Cyberpunk character. So we're going to be doing a Cyberpunk character, but I already have kind of like a prompt in mind because it's something that I've been working on the side a little bit for like a game project. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to kind of design out this character. So the story with this character is that he's kind of just, right now we don't really have a name for him, but he's called Muscle. So he's going to be exactly what you think. He's kind of the muscle of, the world. He kind of heads like the security for this organization in this kind of like cyberpunk themed world. And the biggest idea with him is he's supposed to kind of actually represent actual musculature. So one of the things that is part of the prompt is they kind of pictured him kind of bull-like. So I wanted to play with some kind of bull armored shapes along with adding some cool kind of like cyberpunky things to it, but I want to kind of start out with just a little fun kind of like minotaur-ish type or bull-like silhouette to start with, and then kind of just go from there and see what we can come up with. I think it's important before I dive into like details, kind of come up with some sort of silhouette first that I like. So we can kind of start there. It's always good to flip your canvas to make sure that your design isn't getting too wonky in the process. But yeah, I really like the idea of these like really big hands, and maybe the tiny feet. We'll have to play with just how big he really will be or is. Or maybe he'll be kind of like on all fours instead. That could be kind of interesting. And maybe his horns face out instead. So again, before like applying any sort of, armor or cyberpunk detail, I think getting just like the silhouette first is going to be kind of the most important thing here. Just to feel out if any of these are going to kind of speak to what I want to do. The game that I'm also making that has this character in it is a 2D platforming game. So with that, I feel like it's good to talk about designing for a specific genre of game, right? So if this game was like a Dark Souls game or something like that, right, where it's like an action RPG, quite literally Souls-like, then we would be treating this design probably pretty differently. And I don't mean just by the design of, oh, it's going to be scarier or it's not going to be cyberpunk. I mean, what does this character look like from the view in which we're going to see it, right? So if we're only thinking about a platforming game, then we're only thinking about kind of a side profile or kind of like a flat 3/4 view. And so that's going to dictate a lot of the shape changes and things that we're going to make as far as... Or it's kind of like what can we get away with, or what's going to read the best from that angle. Also thinking about, how is he going to move across the screen and things like that. I think is a really important note to add. So when it comes to, designing, you can't always just pick what you think is coolest. You also have to think about what's going to be the most practical for whatever genre it is that you're designing. If it's a top-down 3/4 view, then it's going to be a very, if it's like an isometric type game, then you're looking at something that's very, very different. So, I could see maybe a view that's kind of like that. Maybe a little smaller. So I try to design in scale. So if this guy's going to be that big, then this dude would, on screen would be about that size instead. You can probably see maybe the back foot over here. So, that would change the way we could have him, move across screen. This might be a little too 3/4, but you want a little bit of a 3/4. You don't want always, for platformers, kind of like a complete profile. It's kind of like that fake 3/4. I don't know, if you've seen Mario, you can see both of his eyes. He's technically supposed to be running forward, but you always are seeing a half-turned, view of Mario, right? You see like the front of him and there's his little hand. So we kind of execute these things the same way. I don't have to draw to start with that idea in mind. I think it's good to try to think of those things as early as possible, though. Just because later you don't want to pick something or make something that looks cool, but then you're like, oh, that actually won't work, right? So I think it's important to. It's pretty cool that he's got like kind of starting to maybe some like tubes or something, like fibrous tubes. They're very like cyberpunky. Not sure yet. And also, it's important to ask, okay, is he going to be, I think one of his moves in the game would be that he's charging forward, so he would like headbutt you or ram you. You'd have to like jump to avoid it or do something to avoid it. So that being said, what character could best fit those move sets as well? Or is he going to have like a really big, cool, like sci-fi weapon or something? So we could do something like that where I think the idea of something always big would be cool. Try to design it more in what we would see in game. It could be cool. You know, again, the prompt said bowl-like, but right now I'm doing the straight up, it's a bowl. But we could play with something where maybe its armor is, you know, horned, or, you know, we could play with something like that instead, where obviously it has to have a giant hammer or something, big sci-fi hammer. That could be kind of cool. That could be fun. I'm also thinking I like seeing the knuckles drag, so we could do something where maybe he's dragging. Maybe he has both hands. I think just playing with like poses is a lot of fun too, to try to figure out like who this character is. I also think this is a very successful shape. I like that shape a lot, so I think trying to mimic that, we're trying to do something that's kind of like it. So maybe it's more his face. Because the game's rather simple and rather stylized, so maybe we can have him... Maybe he's very slow, but he comes at you. And he's like holding this giant... It's like dragging this big axe or something. Maybe dragging something on the ground. I think that could be kind of fun. Again, it's all about readability. So if I want this pose, I want to make sure that it's very readable to the audience as to what he's doing and what's going on. And also this is where maybe he's like 3/4 turned, but he's dragging like a giant hammer or something. Right, so he's pulling that towards you. It's like crushing up the ground as he's kind of lugging it along, puffing up smoke. Also trying to think of other things too, like, I mean, big hammer's a pretty obvious weapon. But maybe we could do something that's not as obvious. Like maybe instead of dragging a big hammer, maybe it's got like 2 like cyber chains or like cyber maces or something like that. I think the low hunched, you know, feeling I think is a good one to go with. Matter of how tiny do we want to make these legs? You know, we could make him tiny, or we could try to do something where he just stays, you know, kind of thick as well, right? We could do something that kind of feels more like that as well. Just to vary it from, you know, what's going on over here. trying to think of more fun horn shapes. We could do something maybe where it's coming forward. That could be kind of a fun shape. And then maybe now he's holding... That was an excellent chain. Let's do that again. That wasn't any better, but it's fine. He's got a spiky mace ball. Maybe he drags that behind him. He's got two. If there's any preferences on any of these, you can always comment in the chats. I think the big stand-up-ish ones could be cool. We can also still continue to play with... I don't think these ideas are as successful. I like the ideas for posing, but not for anything else. We'll just hide them for now. But I think we could play with something where it's more like a person in bull-like armor, or have bull-like modifications or something like that. So we could still play with a very human type proportion, and maybe he's got, you know, neck legs or something. Maybe really big traps or something. I think as long as we give him a feeling that he's kind of hunched over, it would be fun. Oh, Ryan Artward says, I saw your panel at Lightbox for 2D to 3D transition. Thanks for all the input you gave us. Oh, yay! That makes me happy. Yeah, Lightbox was this past weekend. It was super fun. So many awesome artists we got to see, and yeah, I did a talk on the transition from 2D to 3D, which is very prevalent for this stream because it's kind of what I like to talk about. I talk about, you know, we start with the 2D design and bring it into 3D. So I hope people got a lot from that talk, and maybe made 3D feel a little less intimidating and scary. Lightbox is a bit, yeah, Lightbox is super cool. It's really something special that, as an artist, I feel like maybe we take it for granted sometimes that we have such an amazing community. But we really shouldn't, because we do have a pretty incredible community of people and an amazing talent pool of artists that are willing to share their knowledge and learn and connect with everybody. And I just think it's super cool. Maybe it wouldn't be zappy, but I don't know yet. Yeah, I got some good art books from there. Met some cool people. Yeah, Lightbox is a really amazing artist event. Always ready to go to the next one. Could be like a weird sci-fi helm. Kim Zord Motion says that's the first time I see talking about Lightbox. Yeah, Lightbox isn't that old. Technically it's in its 5th year, but because 2 of those was COVID, I kind of say it's only been around for 3 because it's not as fun online. But yeah, Lightbox is an artist convention that's out here in LA in the Pasadena Convention Center. And yeah, it's just a bunch of really incredible artists from the industry going and talking. Like Craig Mullins is there. James Gurney always shows up, which is super cool. A lot of people from Sony Santa Monica have booths there. Riot had some people there doing separate booths, but also they had their own booth. Bunch of really also just individual artists. There's also people like Ryan Lang selling his book, which was awesome. Yeah, it's quite the cool event to go to. Standing up one's cool. I'm always like my first design, which I don't know. I like to try to find another design that I like just as much, so I feel like I have better choices. This one's cool too. I like the horns on that one. Maybe I'll try to execute the horns on one that's a bit more stand-up-ish. Because then he'll feel like really big. I mean, he'll still feel big hunched over, but I think one of the ideas was that he was supposed to feel very noble. So hunched over, he feels a bit more brutish, but if we get him to stand up more, then he'll feel slightly more like a noble, kind of like protector of the city kind of vibe, which was what we were initially kind of trying to go for. So I still want to be slightly hunched, but just maybe not so much, right? But yeah, Lightbox was super cool to be surrounded by so many awesome artists. And you always get to see people you haven't seen in a long time. You know, the people I did the talks with, Kyle Brown and Daniel Zenny, are really awesome. I went to school with Daniel, so we all went to the same school. We all went to Gnomon, but yeah, it was just super cool to be able to see him again and like kind of catch up and see how everybody's doing, like where you at nowadays, and you know, oh, your art's really cool, like I still follow all your stuff, or you know, and just kind of catch up on things. It's super nice, especially because most artists, like, we pretend that we're very introverted until we start to talk to people about art, and then all artists kind of come out of their shell when it comes to that stuff. So it's really cool. Yeah, you can watch the Lightbox YouTube. They'll post up the panels at some point. I don't remember when. They don't do it immediately, but you can always go back and watch a lot of them, like later on, which is cool. It feels like too stand up. Doesn't feel threatening when he does this. I'll try the same thing, but I'm gonna punch him over a little bit. I'm trying to have a happy medium, but he might just be a hunched over dude. Again, trying to draw him more in the pose in which I would see him in. Like, I'm trying to draw what he would really look like from a game perspective. Because they wouldn't be facing you. Maybe they wouldn't like an animation or something, but overall, like, again, that silhouette's going to matter about that weird 3/4 view. You can't go pretty crazy, just make them giant arms. It should be very clear that his arms are the thing that's going to attack you. He'll charge at you, but it's gonna be... Maybe he's got like gorilla almost, like his arms are so big that he rests on the ground with them. That could be kind of fun. The way you word it is very funny, but J.D. Smith is wondering who this character is going to be. Yeah, so if you just got here, we are building... I have a prompt from a game that I'm working on. Just a personal project. And I figured I'd just kind of like try to knock out one of the character boss fights, I guess, in it. So the idea for this character is he's kind of known as like the muscle. So the idea is it does take in place in like a cyberpunk type city. So later we're just trying to kind of get a silhouette going, but later we're going to add more like cyberpunk-esque things to his armor. And so, or to just like the shape and silhouette itself. So we can kind of play with that. But yeah, the idea is we're just kind of making this cyberpunk-esque character for a game that it's like a personal project of mine that I'm working on that I thought would be fun to kind of like share with everybody, and just so you guys can see how I kind of go about like a personal... I mean, you guys do kind of see how we go about personal projects. So it's not super archetypal this time around, but I think it's fun nonetheless. I am starting to like the four-legged one. Because then he would just like ram and charge you, or he'd do like these big like slam things. He feels very strong and like very ready in this pose. And then this one's interesting. I like the kind of like Sabu, like large neck kind of feeling that we have for this guy. I think this one's kind of a fun idea. But I'm also wondering, like, you know, how do we cyberpunk it up with some stuff? This game's like a pretty like simple, like stylized game, so I don't want to go crazy with details. Two birds, one stone. That's what I'm here for. I thought it'd be a fun project to work on. Four-legged one looks more beastly and intimidating. I do agree. I definitely agree with that one. I think we could make some of the other ones more beastly, intimidating. Like, I guess this one technically, maybe that's why this one's not. Because I am liking this one. It's just a matter of finding, or it's just like finding the right read. Maybe we can make his arms stand out maybe a little wider so you can see his feet in there. That's the weirdest part, actually. I don't think it's not that I've ever done it, but drawing for this angle in particular is actually a really interesting challenge. I have done it before, but not on a character that's like this. So this is kind of like a fun, like, kind of challenge to think about, where I want him to read from a very specific angle, because you're not really probably going to see him from any other angle. Kuya, hello, cool sketches, thank you. So I think that's kind of the challenge of this, is finding a cool silhouette from this angle in particular. So I think that's partly why the four-legged one is pretty successful, is because it reads very well. I'd probably turn him a little more in the final than how he's facing now, but like it's still a good start. And I do still like the third one. So we can kind of, let's try to, because these guys are all right, but I'm not feeling it, these guys. Same thing with this one. Taking notes. Jay is asking, do you work in this pace when working for your client, or faster? So you actually bring up probably a pretty good point. Is speed is not, fast isn't really a thing. I try to always talk about that to my students. Is being fast is, that's what they say, right? Is to push and meet deadlines and do all that stuff. You got to be quote unquote fast. But I actually think a lot of that stuff comes from just, it's a matter of efficiency. So if I'm really confident in building something or creating something, I'm going to try to do this guy, but in like trying to vary it. I think the biggest thing is about being efficient with your shapes, or efficient with the way you're exploring or the way you're designing, right? But also everything's so different every time. When you work with a client, you might be sculpting something and you'll look at it and know exactly, you're like, oh yeah, I have an exact idea as to, kind of what they're looking for, or what they want. And then when you execute it, they go, yeah, that's perfect, And then there's going to be other times where you're just not going to hit that mark, right? Like you're just going to kind of struggle through that, and you're not going to be able to figure out what the client wants, and that's going to be a little bit more back and forth, right? So it really just depends on how you want to execute these things, or like your experience in executing certain things, or it also is a matter of yeah, it's a lot of it's just really, I don't want to say, it's not really luck. That's not it. Just sometimes I think, depending on your experience, you might, that's the kind of nice thing about art, is you are going to run into challenges that you're not going to know how to, go about them sometimes. And that's okay. That's kind of the point. Is, you're not going to do everything perfect from the beginning. It's gonna just kind of take side. There we go. Kind of getting something. I haven't really drawn a lot today, so it's kind of warming up as well. I just want to get a little bit more of a quarter turn, and then he'll have this arm that'll face a little more on the outside. Some serious note-taking happening also here. What game engine are you using for your personal project? It's gonna probably either be Godot, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, honestly, or it will probably be in Unreal. I have the most experience in Unreal, but it really is going to depend on, I'm not on the programming side, so it's really a matter of who we find and what they're comfortable with. That's feeling cool. I'm going to treat this more like a client thing because I'm basically doing design work. So I'll do 3 designs, and then I guess maybe just you'll have to tune in next week to see which one gets picked. And see how we can go from there. But I am liking these shapes so far. I'm just turning this character more into what you would see in game. And then I also want to vary up, when you're offering designs to heavy class character. When you're offering up designs to a client or to someone who, if you're not making the final decision, you want to give a good variety. So if we pick that this guy in the middle is more of like a charging quadruped type 1, maybe we change the horn shape on this guy because we're picking him to have a certain moveset. So for example, maybe it does make more sense for him to have the big horns, right? Which could be kind of cool. And it has like a much more interesting like silhouette read. And it also doesn't get in the way of seeing what his hands are going to do and stuff like that, right? So we might do something like that, whereas maybe now this guy, maybe his horns like curl around. Maybe you can go like a ram type option or something, because maybe he'll be using like a weapon or something else, and his silhouette comes from maybe some cool hair or something on the back, right? So it's all about that starting to look more boorish, but you get the idea. That don't give your client 3 options that look almost the same, right? The goal of that concept art, that initial design phase, is to find 3 unique, different ideas. My other idea with this guy is actually to break up the silhouette. I thought it'd be cool if he has like a really big, cool shoulder, and then the mech stuff is kind of like thin and pipey along here, and then he's got more big gauntlet type things. So that also is going to really break up that chest, and it gives more space for me to put the legs in between. But yeah, asking yourself, what are you offering to the client that's unique with each one, right? What's your design pitch? Being like, oh, I picture this guy doing X, Y, Z thing, or I picture this one doing this, right? And how that plays in game, I think, is super important. Maybe you can do a lunge swipe grab as well. Yeah, I think some sort of cool lunge swipe, or a big, like reaches forward and pulls, or yeah, I think any of those things could be really fun. Again, part of the design is trying to find the versatility in each one and say, what each one could or can't do. I think this one is cool, but I think it's going to be our most quote unquote like stereotypical one, where he's got maybe he's holding the big axe on the other side. So we'll put his arm there. And again, that silhouette of something that he's definitely going to hit you with. Right? Could be very cool. Maybe you guys can come up with cooler cyberpunk weapons than me. I'm just kind of making fantasy cyberpunk at this point, which is fine. Someone also said my Cami fan art is amazing. Thank you, Kuya. I did that as a gift for a friend. We did a Secret Santa. We pulled a Secret Santa on our Discord. We all had to, pick 3 things that we wanted drawn, and then we got a random artist that on the server to draw for us. So I actually did that sculpt for a Christmas gift for someone. They wanted Cammy, so I gave him Cammy. Jay's asking, what are some of your biggest and proudest projects you've worked on, and did it just fall onto your lap, or did you chase it? Those are good questions. Favorite projects. Favorite projects are always so tricky because each one is so unique and challenging. I worked on Mandalorian, the TV show. We made the all the animatronics. We made the This Is the Way guy, and we did a bunch of cool stuff. We did the Baby Yoda. I modeled the Mandalorian's armor and a couple of the other characters' armor in that show. I think it's really cool to be a part of a franchise that's so culturally impactful. I know this might sound blasphemous, but I'm not like the biggest Star Wars fan, but I do love what the films brought to movies, to like what movies could be, and I always will respect them for that. So the fact that I got to work on that and kind of like be part of the lineage, I think is really cool. I'm more of about that film lineage than I am like a huge fangirl over like the franchise itself, but I thought that was super, super cool. So that's a fun one. I worked on a project called Underwater, which was actually really fun. We made these deep sea diving suits that actually had to not go deep sea diving, but they did have to go under the water. And that one was really fun just because like the suit is really cool looking. I think it's one of the best practical effects suits that we got to do. Suicide Squad, that game, the James Gunn one, was super fun to work on. Worked on a lot of challenging stuff on that one because it was me trying to do prosthetics. So that one was pretty cool. I think this guy's I'll try to just clean up some sketches. But I think this guy's kind of already fairly clean. I might try something. I might turn him a bit more. Just trying to get them all into how would you see them in game poses, and then I'll draw on top of them and do some varying designs and like kind of finalizing the cyberpunk aspect of it. Whenever you're lost in shapes, just think, what would Paul Richards do? And that usually will help me. If you don't know who he is, definitely just give it a Google. Paul Richards is amazing. Yeah, Polyferret, love the name, by the way. It says that the four-legged one speaks to him personally or them personally. Sorry, I'm not sure which one. And it adds a nice primal look to break up like high tech. I do think the contrast, right, is actually really fun. So doing something that feels like a beast, but in the form of like high tech, I think could be like a fun play. And then I'm gonna just redraw this guy. I already drew this guy like fairly well, which is why I just brought it back down, and then we'll do it again. So this is kind of my design process, is be kind of loose and very sketchy and just let kind of fun ideas flow. And I'm also trying to correct shapes now as well. So like, this shape isn't the most interesting, but like I asked myself, how can we make it more interesting so we can make it thicker to kind of thinner, and we can break up. So it's maybe more like a water buffalo almost, right? And then that can transfer over to the other side. So just kind of cleaning up those shapes. And also trying to decide, maybe he throws his hands at you, like it's kind of like whippish, or there's like cool like cables that extend or something. So he actually like chain punches you, almost like Vi's gauntlets. If you've seen that, that could be kind of fun. Again, just trying to come up with something that's kind of interesting or fun for the design. Kuya's asking, did I go to Lightbox? Yes, I did. I got to do a talk there with some other amazing artist friends of mine, which was really cool. And so if you've never been, totally go. I had an awesome time. He's also supposed to represent muscle, so maybe there's like fun muscle fibery things to break this guy up, and then it's got like kind of like bone-ish type. And if we're representing bone, maybe this is actually split up into 2 pieces with like tech down the middle. So he feels a bit, I don't want him to feel too bony because he's supposed to feel musculature, but that could be sort of a fun take. Yeah, I got to do a talk at Lightbox and it was super fun. I got to see a bunch of fun friends and hang out with people, and yeah, it was a really good time. Yeah, that Deus Ex Crisis type, that's what I'm thinking too. That kind of, fun skeletal structure. Maybe he doesn't have hands. Maybe he's just got metal hooves. The more to ram you with. Yeah, this could be just all like very super fibrous, like what Six was saying. Jay's asking, when you work on franchises such as big as Star Wars or film industry in general, do they pay you well in the high 5 figures or even 6 figures, or do you not really care? You can work on, the biggest thing about the franchise thing is it depends on where you work as to like what you'll get paid. Just because, I was on the practical effects side of things, so we were a client, whereas if you work on like a Star Wars video game, then that's going to be totally different budget, totally different people, and working with totally different things, right? So it's kind of hard to me to say, like, do they pay well? Because it really just depends on where you're working on the franchise. But they definitely can. It just depends on where. Those figures aren't impossible. I think we'll need something fun here. Whoa. Wait a second. I mean, it would turn more into a ram if I did that, though. Maybe we could do it, though. You like drawing characters that skip leg day? I do, actually. I'm a big fan of doing the whole like giant body and being like, yeah, little tiny legs, and they're never skip arms. Well, for both bulky characters, I think it could be fun. I could do something where I was really trying to figure out how to make these legs bulkier. Maybe we can. Let's try it. Let's try to make sure that he works out and he gets leg day in there. You know, it'd be something maybe more. You're not wrong, so do something more like that. Potentially. Or I feel like in order for his legs to fit in there, we might have to do something where... And also, see, don't be afraid to just draw and redraw. If you need to erase or get rid of something to try to make it like a stronger silhouette, you totally can. The biggest trick with this one right now is trying to make his legs feel like they're really supporting his weight, and they don't feel like kind of like baby or like not strong. I want them to feel strong. So that's the trick. And I'll just keep drawing until I feel like I get it right. You know, like that kind of works. I can make that work. If he has baby legs, he needs a partner with normal legs. I like the idea of you fight him, and then the next dude, his like phase 2 is his friend comes out, and he's like this like tiny skinny dude on top, but he's just got these like chonkin legs, these giant legs or something. That'd be very weird. Okay, cool. So I think we got our guys here. So I'm gonna merge them down, then I'll split them off again. Because I've been drawing. I draw all over the place, so. Now we can take these guys. And we'll try to refine each one by adding like all the cybernetic stuff to it. So I'll lower the opacity on these guys and try to go in and refine some design stuff. And normally what I would do is I would have, you know, the director, whoever, look at them and be like, hey, what do you think of X, Y, and Z thing? And then, you know, pick from there. So, but in this case, we just have to wing it. So now we have like the shape and silhouette of, you know, a bowl. Now we can start adding and figuring out like, you know, what's like cybernetic and what's not. Try to figure out where his eyeball would be. It's got to have a cool cybernetic. I mean, maybe it just glows. He needs a ring. He needs like a cool ring or something. This is where I'll also flip my canvas a lot too. I usually don't immediately go into this kind of line work, but maybe he's got the floppy ears. Jay's asking, have I worked in a games industry? Yeah, I work in games now. So I'm a senior character artist for a game company called Cold Iron Studios. So we made an Aliens Fireteam Elite. It's a Xenomorph alien game. So I basically sculpt xenomorphs for a living. That's my main thing. And before that, I was over at Cloud Imperium working on Star Citizen and Squadron 42. He's got pointy horns, so maybe he needs pointy nose ring. Polyferret's asking, when you're doing a concept art for something you may not study a lot, how do you get around the knowledge limits, or do you just go heavy with references and design based off of that? Even if I feel like I know something well, I will still almost always try to collect reference. Just because I mean, not James Gurney, sorry. Ian McCaig put it best, was he said that if you can't draw your own face without looking into a mirror, then you need to use reference for everything. Because your face is the thing that you look at the most every day. And if you can't look at that from, memory, then maybe you should almost always look up anything else. So when I'm working on stuff, I'm constantly looking up reference, I have a Pinterest on my other screen right now that's just bowls. It's just like minotaurs and stuff. I just kind of put it up there just to like see and have shapes and stuff. And then I'll have another Pinterest next to it for like tech stuff. So I saw on my Pinterest, for example, these arms that they're cyberpunky, but they're like not real arms. They're they've got like cool little sci-fi piping or whatever you want to call it. So this is how we can start breaking up that shape to find something that feels more of that cyberpunk, and then we can give him, he's got normal mechy type claw. And again, if we're going with, like, he's pretty angular, so I'm going to try to make sure that everything I do feels kind of in that same vein. So this is kind of like our very mech version, I think, probably. That's kind of my idea. Kuya's asking, do I prefer 2D or 3D? I love both. For different reasons, I guess. I really like being able to do both. I think doing both is very fun, where, I can realize stuff in 2D and then I can transfer that directly into cool 3D work. I think is super fun. But I've always had, I think my biggest passion is always in 2D, just because like I love to draw. I love to draw so much. Drawing's so fun for me. Drawing's a thing that I just don't ever seem to get bored of. And it's something that I'm constantly trying to get better at and perfect. Give them bigger feet. So this would be on the other side. Maybe he's got like a... Again, trying to think of how all this stuff... He's got like a round, like, little mech body. This is just on the inside of his body here. Trying to add some, like, you know, line weight stuff is really helpful to figure out where, like, your shadows or where your darks are. It helps break up the line weight more. And his ears are kind of getting in the way, so actually I think it's better. I think it's more interesting if we create like this kind of like hole where his neck sticks out of. Kind of feels more mechy that way. Maybe he's a bull shift. I like it. So maybe another version he could have an exposed brain in the glass dome. I was thinking about that before a different character altogether, because there's another character that is more of the brain, where he's supposed to represent the muscle side of all of this. So, but nothing. I do love a good brain case. That's always a fun one. Again, just continuing to try to add some line weight, and then we'll add this wrinkly. And really, this is more for also, you know, you want to think about, okay, how complicated is this game? This game is not that complicated, so you don't want to overcomplicate the design and make this like super crazed out mech bull with like all this crazy insane detail. Like, you want to keep it like just the right amount of crazy, if that makes sense. So, you know, and then we can try to find where his draws axe now. I usually would draw through on a different layer, but I'll just kind of fake it. I mean, drawing through is always a good, if you don't know where your axe is going. And again, there's nothing wrong with drawing it out and erasing, and you know, I can now fix my perspective. That's his ear on the other side. That's being confusing. There we go. That's his other like big shoulder pad thing, which we can make maybe a little more fun where we can make it round more. And by round, I just mean like be bigger so it has like a cooler. Right, and then it could be, then you would see it, then it would make more sense to see it on the other side. So you'd see it do that. So kind of like these big shoulder pads. It could like maybe shake or move around the game. Crazy always needs a balance. It's very true. Sorry, I'm reading questions. Are you going to put glowy stuff on the axe? Possibly. I don't think I'll get to color because I think I'll just be sketching some ideas for this stream, but color is always an option. And doing glowy stuff is also always an option. My only thing about this design is I think it's fun, but I don't think it brings out the muscly. I mean, he's muscular as far as like being big, but I think he needs to represent more of like the actual muscle. So, you know, later on, maybe I would, instead of his arms being these like just fabric things, we could do something else there. But again, I'll leave it for now. We can move on to the next one and see where this one takes us. And I'll just keep that in mind, right? So when doing this guy, I can, you know, try to do that on this guy to have a variance. The ultimate muscle, okay. Give the ultimate muscle, sounds good. I think for that, I'm gonna actually, really quickly, I am going to look up like the game Crisis. Because I am trying to remember what those muscle fibers look like. And that's always fun to just, you know, see what they do as far as breakup or what that looks like. I think it's just straight up, yeah, it's just kind of straight up muscle fibery stuff. But let's go for it. I'll try to make this guy something in that vein. And maybe we can do, like again, maybe he's got big protective armor that goes around in the front. But then it protects all that muscle fibery type stuff. It also gives breakup, so, you know, if we're doing the ultimate muscle fibery one, then it'll be good to make sure that we have some breakup that happens in there. This might be a little, I don't know. We'll see if this feels a little too detailed. It might. And then we can do, you know, your classic robot. Robot fingers. Muscle fibers are fun to sculpt. That's true. You actually reminded me that I have to sculpt this guy, so thank you. I was just like, I'm just drawing. So yeah, muscle fibers would be fun to sculpt. Also, these would be like techie muscle fibers too, right? So. Maybe like little glowy things on his back. I think again, I don't want to go bone, so I'm trying to be good about not giving him too much of that type of read. And there's got to be a good balance between like too much muscle and like interesting plating. Glowing mane, maybe. That would be cool. Or they could be like cables. You know, little glowy cables that stick out. Or they could be connected cables. That feels a little bit more sci-fi, right? Trying to make sure that it feels like it's going in the right direction. Kind of weird, creepy child music. And now it's back to normal. I don't know. Sitting here by myself and hearing the breathing in my ear, it's interesting, to say the least. Try to give like a feeling of a lat there. It's going up into the back. And then again, try to break up in areas like his hip, right, would be an area that wouldn't have, then maybe we can put like a indication that would be like a metal framework or something underneath there. So it's, you know, kind of more like his rib cage kind of thing. This one's actually turning out pretty fun. I'm liking this guy. And the other thing too is just trying to break up the muscle fibers so that way they don't feel too monotonous. And trying to break up the what is not muscle fiber versus what is. There might be too much going on, but we'll see. I think that's better, and then there'll be like crevices. Again, trying to keep it simple, but you know, it is a muscle fibery thing. Kuya is asking, are you going to sculpt it later? Yes. I will be sculpting it later, and that will be next week. I will sculpt it, and that will be fun. Yeah, so if you're new, I always draw in the beginning, but then of the very first week, I'll draw. And then once we decide on, you know, design and do all that stuff, then I'll take it and we will sculpt it out in 3D. So this guy will be fun because it'll be a challenge to keep it stylized while also... Oh, and his tail can just turn into that cable. That'd be cool. Okay, and it makes sense. And then again, adding those line weights helps a lot to kind of break up the monotony of your line once you have all the shapes in there. It also helps say what's in front of what. Maybe a theme is they all have a ring. Yeah, we do something like that. And this would obviously be a lot easier to tell the difference in breakup. Like, you know, his muscle fibers, maybe they would be red, and then everything else is not would be like a silver, you know, kind of black or something like that. And we could always put maybe like more plating in areas if we wanted to cover up, you know, certain stuff, but I'm also wondering, I feel like the arm silhouette's competing with the face, so just because of that, I'm actually gonna try to move it down and shrink it maybe a little bit. Yeah, because I want the silhouette of the face to be the thing that sticks out, you know, and have this cool silhouette. And I just think it was over here before, so his face was kind of getting covered by the arm in the back. So stuff to think about. All right, got two. Do one more, and then maybe we have some time to put some like shadows or something in there. Maybe a flat color. We'll see. Kuya's asking in ZBrush. Yes, in ZBrush. Says I bought ZBrush, but I'm relatively new to it. I can't give you a full-on tutorial of how to use it, but hopefully this stream will help you maybe see how to kind of utilize all the cool tools that are within it. Polyfair says I'm in for a journey. Yeah. Freerunners is asking, do you draw all the time before going to sculpt, or sometimes you go straight to 3D exploration? There's times where I'll definitely just jump straight into 3D. Really just kind of depends, though. I think I'm comfortable. I think the biggest thing is I'm comfortable enough in 3D that if I wanted to just jump and explore, I can. I think it's easier to explore ideas, though, regardless, in 2D. Reason being is to block out all these shapes, for example, to explore all these varieties in different body types and stuff. That would take way longer in 3D to block this type of stuff out. Now, if I picked a quadruped, like let's say I picked the quadruped, and I knew this one I wanted to go with, I could block that on 3D and then pose different angles, and then I could try to draw on top of it and do variants that way, right? So there's so many ways to skin that cat when it comes to trying to design. But I always find that designing in 2D is way faster. And if you're new to 3D, don't design in 3D. You know, I think you're just giving yourself more of a heartache than you need to. Just stick with trying to, make a cool project in it that you already have a layout, you already have an idea, and you don't have to go in and do all this crazy designing while also learning, if that makes sense. You're already learning the software. Don't try to learn how to design within it as well. I think I might go back to this one and change those arms. So I'm going to put some of that into this one, and then I'm going to go back and change the arms. Because I think it's a cool idea for breakup, but I'm also trying to figure out ways to incorporate that musculature that we talked about. Because I think it's a really important part of the design, so I don't want to lose it, but I also don't want every design to look exactly the same from the get-go. Polyfair says, what's your workflow in ZBrush? Do you remesh your Dynamesh with Z-spheres, sculptures? I usually do, I start with Dynamesh, and then I'll go into Z-remesher, at least for the sake of the stream. I'll do Z-remesher. In a normal games pipeline, it would be just retopping. But I just use ZRemesher because it's faster, and I only have 2 hours with you guys most of the time. So, yeah, that's what I'll usually use for stream's sake. And I like ZRemeshing because I like to get the the cleanest topology that I can before starting to sculpt on it. I don't like to just keep in Dynamesh, because as you start detailing and stuff, you run out of editability, because your mesh is only one resolution at any given time. So I just think that can be kind of problematic. I'm gonna try to give them. I mean, the horns kind of work. Try to give them. Something else. Yeah, poly count gets really high with, like you said, almost no control. And so yeah, I'll use ZBrush, and I do a lot of very low poly Z modeling. And if you do want to look at my process, you can, even though this is live, it also stays on YouTube. So if you want to go back and watch any of the other streams, you 100% can. You know, you can go binge watch them before, tune in, and stay updated on the latest of what we do. So yeah, you can go and check those out if you want to. They're on YouTube, and I don't know how Twitch works, so I don't think they're on Twitch, but I know they're on YouTube. I'm just trying to give this like more, so this guy's almost all muscle fiber. I'm trying to give like a feeling where it's like plating on top. I don't really like this guy yet. I'm still working on it. Still trying to figure out what I can do to. We really haven't had like big bicep muscle fiber, so I do still think we need some of that in there. But then, I mean, I am still kind of doing the same thing, but just trying to figure out a way to make it feel a little different. I don't mind just continually like trying to draw and redraw and draw on top of again, and try to figure out what's gonna work. If you have like a least favorite one of your designs, try to work on it until it becomes your favorite. Especially when you're handing them off to a client, so that way when they pick one, you're not bummed about it. And also, there's a saying in the industry that a client will always pick your worst one. So if you like all of them, then they can't really pick a worse one. So that will just save you heartache in the long run. It's a very difficult challenge, though, to like want to do a mech but also keep it simple. Like how far is too much detail. That's kind of like what I'm trying to balance right now. I think they're all interesting in their own ways. So I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't say this guy's turned into my favorite yet. But that's okay. For a stream, I'm not super worried about it. But yeah, maybe we can do something. I'm gonna add some lame whites to this dude, and I'm gonna go back to the other guy and add some more fibers on him, because I feel like that's a... You know, you want variety, but you also want to stick to the design prompt given. So, you know, if the client's like, oh, I picture, you know, I want to see, because he represents muscle, he needs to have muscle fibers, right? Then you're like, okay, well, I need to incorporate that into each of the designs, but in a different way, right? So you can't completely just ignore the prompt, but you have to find a unique way to add, like each of these has a very unique shape design, right? Like their silhouettes are super different. So I think that's an also important key thing to note when you're designing stuff is, you know, if they're like, the person needs a blue dress and you give them a pink jacket, that's, you know, it's not it's not adhering to what the design is being asked for. Even if you think it's quote unquote cooler, if it doesn't fit the design prompt, then it's not going to fit into the idea of the game. And especially with like client work, for this it doesn't matter because it's my own thing for the stream, but it's like, you know, you want to keep in mind that if you're working with someone, you're trying to match their vision, not yours. It's about trying to match what they want, not what you think is cool. And there is a difference. Okay. I like the smooth bend the third one has from the head to the back. Yeah, I think I figured out, because I didn't want to give him 4 horns. It just felt like too much. So I actually do like the solution I came up with, where it feels kind of like vertebra cyber-y. I think is kind of fun. And it's not so distracting where there's a bunch of stuff that's like distracting you up here. It keeps it a little bit more focused onto, you know, the front. And I could probably make the horns like even bigger to like really make sure that that's like a core part of the design, is make it very, very prominent. Now you're just being domestic, Ashley, but you know, you get the idea. This leg is bothering me. Move it. It's like just not sitting. Like the perspective's like all wonky. a little better. I still don't like it, but I'm gonna move on. Just kidding, I'm not. I'm just like, oh, it doesn't bother me. Alright. So I got that guy, we got the middle guy. Middle guy's definitely so far kind of a winner here, but I do think this guy is really cool too. I just don't like these sleeves that I made. So I think they all need to have the muscle fiber. This guy's just gonna have a much more simplified version of it. And then maybe we could do, I don't mind his chest, but maybe we could do like a more fibrous chest too, right? Follow Law has a lot of questions. I'm getting to them. What's it like working with game designers? What do they do? I read that they come up with concept ideas and implement 3D sound, animation, etc. Do they pitch their ideas to the team, such as yourself? Yeah, so a game designer usually will have a vision for a game and then works with level design and works with a team of writing and a team of artists to try to visualize that idea. In the end, I think for games specifically, that idea does kind of become the studio's idea, right? Because without the whole studio, that idea doesn't see through. So I do think it's really important to keep in mind that the game designer also has to be very adherent to like what can be done, what's within scope, what isn't within scope, release lines and things like that. But yeah, the game designers, usually it's their job to direct and guide all the other people and artists on the team into the right cohesive vision, right? So that's usually the thing. And then maybe a silly question, but I doubt it, but it's 100% vital to know perfect human anatomy to do character design, or can you hack some proportions with proper reference under the nose? I think it's vital to learn anatomy. I think when you say, I think the biggest thing is, do you need to know that this is the delta minor and major, and this is the trapezius, and this is the radial brachii muscle, and blah, 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 and this is the bicep, blah, and all those things. No, I know many artists who are amazing at anatomy who don't know the names of the muscles. And that's totally fine. That being said, I do think the more you know, the easier translating and understanding anatomy becomes, especially with something like comparative anatomy, which is the study between anatomy of animals and humans. So I think it's one of those things where learning anatomy as much as you can will never hurt you, but not learning enough will definitely harm you in understanding your character design, because everyone that can push anatomical forms really, really well, like any artist that you follow or anything like that, they know anatomy super, super well. Chances are they know anatomy super, super well. So the more you know, the better off you can be equipped. See, now I like this guy. There you go. That's much better. I don't think he needs an axe. I think his arms also really small. Come here. I might have to... His arm needs to be, like, way bigger. That's about the right size. So do you ever paint out silhouettes, or is gesturing your main go? So drawing silhouettes is fine. I just find that I won't say that I'm not good at them, but I don't feel like I'm as good at designing in purely silhouettes. I have done it before because I think you can get a lot of cool, happy accidents. I just think that most of the time I'm very line heavy, and that's just where my background's from and what my background is in as far as just drawing and creating stuff. So for me, I'm just more comfortable doing line work and gesture work, like as if I'm figure drawing. Yeah, Polyferret mentioned learning about bones and muscle insertions. Knowing where a deltoid inserts into the bone, or like where the bicep is, where it starts and where it ends, like all that stuff is super vital for knowing how to push and shape anatomy. All the muscle fibers that I'm drawing, all these characters are all, you know, based on real anatomy, muscle fibers, right? So if you look at something like Crisis as well, like all of the muscles follow anatomy. So if you don't know it, then it's very hard to follow that language, right? The more you know. Never hurt. I think I might have time to add a little bit of color, but that's about it. This is also the reason I use Clip Studio Paint. This tool is my favorite. It doesn't do the most perfect job, but man, is it faster than just filling it in by hand. So this is usually how I start to block out color. I won't worry about it being perfect, I just want it to be almost the whole thing, and then filling it in shouldn't be too hard. So Freerunner says, so 3D characters are the ones going on a date saying things like, wow, such a nice pronounced tricep and things like that. Yeah, probably. That's probably us. We're very observant. Let's just say that for sure. And even if it's, you know, not due to anatomy, it's just like, oh, whoa, those proportions are weird. You know, whether you're looking at like even like a building or like an odd shape, like anything can catch your attention. But yes, I definitely can look at a bunch of anatomy and be like, oh, look at that. That's very interesting. Or like, oh, that pec is like really interesting. Blah blah. Yeah, Anatomy for Sculptors is a really good one. There's another one by Michael Hampton that's called Anatomy for Artists, I think. That's a really good one. Yeah, those are all really, really useful. All right. So now I can go in here, and what I will do is then fill out. I'll just fill out the outline. But I do kind of like these little happy accents that it gives me sometimes. I've always wanted to kind of keep it, but it's kind of silly to keep it without having a good reason. Where's that going? Filled in all these weird gaps, didn't it? I don't know what that is. What is that? Oh, I know what that is now. Never mind. That is supposed to be there. Oops. See, silhouette-wise, I'm looking at that colored in, and I'm like, ah, it's kind of weird. Might change that. Might thin it out, so it technically look maybe something like that, so it breaks up the silhouette more. Because that's supposed to be the other side of the shoulder pauldron, but it's kind of hard to tell that's what that is, so. Imagine not worrying about making it perfect, but making perfect sketches in a short time on stream. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to just finish it. That's the key. Is I'm not rushing, but I'm always trying to work within the time frame that I have to show you guys something. You know, if I'm too slow, then that does become problematic because then you guys don't get to see anything. You know, or it would take me months and months and months to work on the same character, which I also don't think would be super interesting. I mean, maybe it would for you guys at some point, but I just don't think so. So then what's usually cool is I can usually select the outside, like Control Shift invert. Oops. And then I can color. I can get all the stuff in the inside that I didn't get before. And I can always erase the things that it's catching, but I find doing line work, filling in work like that is a lot faster than doing it by hand, which is why Clip Studio is pretty awesome. Everyone was saying, love seeing you use Clip Studio. Love that G pen. Yeah, I actually use I downloaded one that's called Soft Ink pen, and I really like it because it feels like a scratchy, like fountain pen. I'm a big fan of it. Now the thing is to see what kind of gray. I'm just plotting out where I think gray could be. Again, it's not perfect, but that's what I like about Clip Studio. Because I can kind of plot out where I think these things could be gray versus red, and it does help. Yeah, you get like a pretty good idea of your characters break up like very quickly, which I really like that kind of process. Right now I can go in with a normal brush and, you know, fix corrections and stuff. I actually really like the happy accent here where it was like a bone that actually got kind of selected, so I think that's cool. Oops. Then I can always change. I can change the the variation of color, but I think just getting like a decent block out like this is a good place to start for sure. For sure. Sometimes I forget how good their fill is. Oh yeah, definitely. Feels pretty good. Pretty good. Oops. Let's make the axe something that's not him color. Again, it's not, doesn't have to be perfect, just trying to get a breakup in there. And there you have it. All right. Cool. So now we have our little muscle man character designs for our Cyberpunk stuff. Now, obviously, I don't think it would stay white. I think it's a little too, it'd probably be like gray, but again, because I have a certain type of background color and things, the color context makes it more difficult, but I think that's a good starting point for our character. So I'm really liking B, but I'll label them real fast and you tell me which one you guys are liking, and maybe you'll see it next week or maybe you won't. I don't know. It's going to be a mystery now. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm liking B, but again, I have to talk to my my partner in crime about which one could be a potential and whatnot. So yeah, I think B's pretty cool. So we'll have to see what he says and we'll get back to it. But anyway, thank you guys for joining the stream. I really appreciate it. Tune in next time to block out the sculpt and all that stuff. And if you guys like the stream, just keep watching on YouTube and all those good things. And I'll see you guys next time. All right. Have a good night, you guys. Bye.